In this video, I'm going to try to do one full B2 First reading and use of English test. We will go through each task and I will show you how to use the best strategies and techniques to save time and to pass the exam. If that sounds good to you, then let's do it. Hi and welcome to Teacher Phil, where I help people like you pass their Cambridge exam. You might have seen me do some other walkthroughs on this channel. And let me tell you, this stuff is really not that easy, even for me. However, I'm going to use my own tips and tricks, which I teach in my other videos as well as on teacherphil.com, to get through the exam as quickly as possible and hopefully pass it. To make it a little bit more realistic, I've chosen a test that I have never seen before, or that I have done with my students. So I don't know the tasks myself. So I've chosen to use the book First for Schools Trainer 2. This is a book that I have never used before. And of course, I'm going to leave a link for you in the description if you are interested. But enough talking. I would say we'll go to my office and get started. So, hello and welcome to my office. Here we are to do a complete reading and use of English test together in B2 First. So just basically a few ground rules. As I told you, I have never seen these tasks before. Obviously, as you can see, I took some screenshots from the book, but I haven't looked at the tasks. I don't know what to expect here in terms of topics exactly or what the questions are. So this is for me, as if I were doing a test myself. Of course, I will speed things up a little bit. So for example, if I need to read a text quickly, I will just skip forward so you don't have to read the text with me, but you can always pause the video and read it yourself. Also, I might skip ahead sometimes if I underline certain things or just do stuff that simply takes time without explanations, just so I don't waste your valuable time. The video is going to be long enough the way it is. And of course, let's see if I can pass this test. Yeah, so let's get started. You can already see part 1 on your screen, where it says chickens are smarter than you think. So the title already gives us an idea about the topic. And as you know, my recommendation for this kind of task is always to read the text very quickly, just to get a general idea and perhaps to already see what kind of vocabulary we might need to use here. So I'm going to read the text very quickly, and I'll skip forward. You can pause the video to read as well, and I will see you in a second. Okay, so here I am. Once again, I've just read the text. I got a general idea, and so let's dive right into the task. So when we try to decide the word or on the word that we need to put in each gap, we have to look at what is around the gap, so that we can exclude or eliminate some of the options and just get a better idea of what is needed. For example, when we look at gap number 1, and always remember gap 0 is an example. Yeah, you don't have to fill in anything there. You always start with number 1 or whichever the number is that is not 0. So here we start with number 1. So it says, this is because we gap to think of mammals such as cats, dogs or horses as being smarter than birds. So I guess here we can already see there is, and I will actually highlight that for you as well. There is an infinitive, which might already help us. Yeah, so let's have a look at our 4 options that we can see here at the bottom, where it says number 1. We have these 4 possible answers that we need to put in each gap, or we have to choose which option we want to put in the gap. And so I can already see consider is not an option here, because after consider we typically use a gerund, the ing form, so that doesn't work. After regard, we typically say we regard someone
as something, so I wouldn't use that as well. Assess. We assess to think. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So here I'm pretty sure that C, tend, is the correct option. So I will put a C in here. And I will also just give this a tick so you know which option I'm thinking of. Okay, so again, I will just skip ahead very quickly. I will look at the rest of the task. I will try to choose the correct answers. And when I come back, I will give you my reasoning before we move on to the next task. Okay, so again, you can pause the video. You can have a look at the options yourself and see if you get the correct answers. So I'll see you again in a second. Okay, so here I am again. As you can see, I have chosen my answers and I have underlined the words that I think help in these situations. In gap number 2, I would go with indicated. Here, because it talks about research has, I don't think research expresses, advises, or displays anything here. Yeah, I wouldn't be aware of these expressions in maybe research expresses or study expresses, perhaps, but I think indicated here is just the best word. Yeah, I can't. It's something that I would say in connection with research. Yeah. In gap number 3, here I am pretty sure that case is the correct option because of this expression. This is not the. So normally we say this is not the case or this is the case. So I'm pretty sure about that. Here it says in number 4, chickens do observe each other's, I believe, behavior. Yeah, the other, I would say each other's actions, we would have to say, or practices maybe, because these are countable nouns, so we would have to use the plural, I would say. So I think here behavior is the best option. Yeah, but I can't base that. Yeah, maybe we observe our behavior. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but behavior seems the best option here to me. In number 5, I would go with aware because of the preposition of. You would say you're familiar with something. Wise doesn't use a preposition. You can stay clear of something, but you are not clear of something, I would say. So here, aware, I think, is the best option. Number 6, I chose C, demonstrate, because I guess chickens cannot declare anything. Like you can declare something with words. They also don't confirm anything, which would mean they signal that they agree. And they can also not expose things. I guess demonstrate here has the best meaning, plain and simple. Then in number 7, I chose characteristic. Yeah, it's because it says a unique. I wouldn't say a unique nature, maybe the unique nature with the definite article. A unique style, that is not really what we use in the context of mammals. And also personality. Yeah, we wouldn't say a personality of mammals in general. Maybe we would say a personality trait of mammals. But here I'm pretty sure characteristic is correct because of a unique. And then last but not least, I chose treatment for 8. To recognize this in our treatment of them. Yeah, I guess with dealings, we would say dealings with them, approach to them. And yeah, we could say management of them, but we do not manage chickens, right? We treat them in a certain way, unfortunately, in a very bad way most of the time. Yeah, in this mass animal, in these mass farms. So I would say treatment is correct here. Yeah, so yes, let me have a look. I think I'm happy with my answers. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with me here on any of the answers. Or of course, if you have any questions. But let me have a look at the correct answers here in task 1 to see if I'm correct. So number 1 is C. I got that one right. Number 2 is A. Yes. 3 C. 4 is B. 5 is D, 6 C, 7 A, and 8 D. That is a good start. I got 8 out of 8. Lucky the teacher gets the answers correct. That is a good start. Okay. All right. So this is how we go about part number 1. Remember, read the text quickly. Look at what's before and what comes before and after each gap, so you can make an educated guess, at least often by eliminating some of the options, and then in many cases you only need to choose between 2 of the options, or sometimes it even becomes immediately clear what you need. So let me clear this off and let's move on to part 2. Here we are. I'll zoom in a little bit for you. Here we go. So part number 2, at first glance, looks very similar to part 1, as there is a short text with 8 gaps. But you can also see that there are no possible answers available to us this time, which means that we have to find the one word that is missing in each gap. So part 2 is a little bit more about grammar, and typically the words that are missing in the gaps, they are words that make the sentence grammatically correct. This could be things like conjunctions or linking expressions, prepositions, perhaps relative pronouns, auxiliary verbs, words like these. So if you keep that in mind, that can already help you a little bit. So it's not so much the right vocabulary expression for each gap, but it's more about what kind of grammar is needed here to make the sentences correct. So once again, just as I did in part 1, I'm going to read the text very quickly, and I recommend doing the same for you. And yeah, I'll be back with you in a second. Okay, so I've just had a quick look at the text. The thing is, futsal, basically football indoors, is something that I have heard about before, and I have watched some matches, so I know a little bit about it, which might make it a little bit easier for me as well to choose the correct words. So just as we do in part 1, in part 2, the same second step applies. We look at what's around the gap to possibly find things that can help us find the correct word. So here the gap, we don't have that here. I cut this out. So the example would be if. Yeah, so this is already given to us in the task. If you're into football, there's no doubt you'll like futsal too. You may already have heard of this exciting, fast-paced sport. How is it played? Yeah, so I guess perhaps they say here, like this looks like a contrast to me. Yeah, from what's before the comma here. I should highlight this like this. What's before the comma and then what's after the comma. Yeah, so they ask this question. They say here, you may have heard of it. I will just use here, but how is it played? You may have heard of it, but how is it played? Yeah, I think that is probably correct here. So I think here we need a conjunction that expresses contrast. And the easiest one here is but. Let me think if we could use a different one. If I want to use however, I would have to use or start a new sentence. However, comma, how is it played? So I wouldn't use that. Same if I want to say, yeah. No, I think but is the best option. I don't think that any other expression of contrast or conjunction of contrast makes sense here. I'll stick with but, yeah? Let's have a look at one more example. Recognized around the world. Official football associations. Futsal is similar to football. I think, so what we see here at the beginning of the sentence, yeah, we have here a structure with a past participle, recognized around the world. So this tells me that we have here a passive verb structure, because futsal obviously doesn't recognize itself, but others recognize it. Yeah. So here we have official football associations, like the national associations, I guess, or FIFA and others like UEFA. they recognize futsal, which means that in a passive structure like this, how we normally show the agent or who does the action is by using the word by. Yeah, so I think that makes sense here. Recognized by official football associations. Futsal is similar to football. I think that makes sense. So we see here that we have a specific verb structure, and this verb structure dictates the word that needs to go into the gap. In this case, by official football associations, because they recognize futsal. Okay, so I guess you see how this works, and just like last time, I'm going to have a look at the other gaps. I'm going to fill them in with my ideas, and again, I encourage you to do the same. And in a second, I'll come back to you to explain to you why I chose these words, and then we'll see if I am correct or not. All right, so welcome back. You can see now my guesses or my answers, and let me walk you through them very quickly so we get on the same page here. So we did the first two as an example together. So let's continue with gap 11. So here I chose rather because we can see that there is a kind of, we should say, comparison, or it says here, being played on a large outdoor pitch. Futsal is usually played on hard indoor courts. So there's like this comparison between futsal and, let's call it, regular football. And so here, because we also get this word here, then, yeah, that tells us that there's a comparison. And so we often use this expression, rather than, yeah. So I would prefer to do this rather than that. Yeah, so that is a good expression here. So I'm pretty confident that rather is the correct option here. So then in number 12, I chose the word with. So it says here, futsal is usually played on hard indoor courts. And then it says much smaller goals than football and never more than 5 players. So I guess here with just tells us the aspects or the characteristics of futsal. So I think with works quite well. I'm thinking about other words now that I'm looking at it again. With much smaller goals. Perhaps we could also say using much smaller goals, or including, or something like this. Maybe that is an option as well. But I think with is the obvious choice here. So I'll keep this. I like maybe including. But yeah, with, I would say works as well, yeah. Okay, so then we continue. It says here the ball is smaller, less bouncy, so it doesn't bounce that much. Games are only 40 minutes long, yeah, in comparison to the 90 minutes of a regular football match. There's a halftime break, and then it says here that the side, that's a team, yeah, sometimes we use the word side, can take 1 timeout per half. So I would say here each side, yeah, I guess here, because we're talking about the fact that both teams have the opportunity to take a timeout, but because here we have the singular noun, side, yeah, I would say each is better. Yeah, if we say both, we would have to say sides with an S, the plural form. So I think that doesn't work. So here I think each is better. Then in 14, I say here, this is when the clock stopped for 1 minute, because we're talking about time. Yeah, so I guess that when makes sense here. This is when the clock is stopped. Yeah. So I'm happy with that. Yeah, we're still talking about this timeout where they can take a break. And then it continues similar to what happens in a basketball match. Yeah, so it is a similar situation. Yeah, and so I think here when and what are probably the best options. This is when the clock is stopped, similar to what happens in a basketball match. Yeah. Yeah, instead of what, we normally can say that which. Yeah, similar to that. Yeah, when the clock is stopped, which happens in basketball matches. But we can only use one word. So here, what I think is the correct option. And then it says the game is particularly good for young people. And I just chose because. So it gives here all the reasons. And that's why because I think works. I wouldn't use anything else here. That makes sense, I guess. So these are my guesses and my reasons. And so let's have a look at the answers again. I'm excited. Let's see what I did here. Okay, so number 9, let me see. Okay, but is correct. Nice. And by as well. Okay, so at least my 2 examples are correct. So I'm happy about that. With 11, I think rather should be right. Yes. Then 12, they also say with. Number 13, yes, each. Yeah, not both, but each. And then in 14, here it says we can use when or where as well. So let me add that too. So there are 2 options that we have here, when and where. Yeah, that is true. I do like when a little bit more though, because we are talking about time. But I still give myself the check here. Number 15 is what, and then in number 16, because is correct, yeah, and then we have a couple of other options here. We can also say as or since, which have the same meaning here as because. Let me just put this here below so you can see it better. But because I chose because, I get a tick. So once again, Teacher Phil gets all the answers right. Well done to me. I'm tapping my own shoulder. Okay. So this is how part 2 works. Very similar to part 1 in as in how you approach the task, even though obviously here you don't have any possible answers, but they work quite similar or similarly. Okay, so again, let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll move on to part 3. Here we are. Oh, peanut butter. I like peanut butter. So I think this is the text I'm going to enjoy. So here in part 3, again, we get a short text with 8 gaps. But this time, we need to take the words that are on the side and we need to choose the correct form of these words to put them in the gaps that are in the same line. Yeah, so we do not have to worry about where we put each of these, but we know that they have to go in the gap that is here on the same line. Okay, so let me remove all of this again. And once again, I will read this text about peanut butter very quickly. I'll be back in a second, do the same, read the text, and then we'll talk again. Okay, so once again, I've given it a look, and there's a lot of useful information about peanut butter in that text. Seems to be quite healthy. I always have some peanut butter at home, but that is not the point here. So we are here to do some work. So of course, let's have a look again. The example, yeah, when I cut this out, I saw the example answer. So here we need to use exactly. Yeah, so this is the adverb of exact because it describes sound. Yeah. So, sorry, maybe even good. Yeah, here we say it sounds good for us, but we don't say it doesn't exactly sound good for us. Yeah, it's not exactly good. Maybe it's not perfect. Yeah, so here we need to use an adverb, because it describes the adjective good. So now let's get into it and let's have a look at a couple of examples again. So it says, common sense tells us that neither food is a particularly healthy, given their high fat content. Yeah, so it talks at the beginning about peanuts and butter. These are the two options when it says here neither food, so not peanuts and not butter. And then it says here, is a. As soon as I see an article like this, that tells me that there needs to be a noun somewhere. So here we have an adverb, here we have an adjective, so I'm sure here we need a noun. The verb that we need to use is choose, and the noun is choice. Yeah, so here I would put choice. And I'm pretty sure here about my choice. Yeah, I think that this is the correct form. And let's have a look at another example together. Yeah, so remember, before we move on, sorry, again, because of the article, so we have this phrase of article, adverb, adjective, gap. You can be almost certain that there is a noun missing, yeah? So in most cases, and because there is, right after the gap, there is no noun, yeah, so that we need to use a noun here. Then, in the next sentence, so it says the products. So we can see here, we have this possessive apostrophe, this possessive S, which means that something that belongs to the product needs to go here. If it's something, that is once again a noun. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that we need to use another noun here. Popular is the word we need to work with, and the noun of popular, as far as I know, is popularity. So here again, I am quite certain that this is the correct option, yeah, because of this possessive structure. So if there's a possessive, then we need to use a noun that belongs to this other noun. Yeah, so here popularity. Okay, so I guess again you get the idea of how this works. Yeah, we look at what is before or after the gap. It's the same idea. Yeah, and that helps us make our decisions. So we think about what grammar is missing in each gap. Is it a verb, a noun, an adjective, an adverb? Is it singular or plural? Is it positive or negative? And that's how we can adjust our answer. So I will go through the rest real quick. Yeah, I'll have a look at it. Again, do the same. Yeah, have a look at the gaps, pause the video for a moment, and when you're ready, come back and we'll have a look together at my guesses and of course the correct answers as well. So I'll see you again in just a moment. Okay, so here I am again with all my guesses and my answers added to the mix. And yeah, let's go through them very quickly so you see why I decided on these forms. And again, let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with me, if you think that there should be something else in the gap. So let's continue here with gap 19. Yeah, that's the one we haven't looked at. My choice here is specialists. So because here we learn that it says a many. That tells me we need to use a plural noun. And then it says food, science, something, say. So that tells me, because the verb is here, that tells me that there is still a noun to come. Yeah. And so because of many, I would use the plural. And I guess people say things. Yeah, so I would use here the personal noun of special, which is specialist, and the plural is specialists. That's why I went for that. Then in 20, so here I chose undoubtedly. And the reason for that is that, first of all, we have here versatile, which is an adjective. And if we want to use a word that describes an adjective, we have to use an adverb. So that would be doubtedly in this case. But because afterwards, yeah, they talk about all the different options that you have. Can be eaten with everything from raw vegetable sticks to toast. Yeah, so they have a lot of different options. So we could say that it is versatile without a doubt, because there are a lot of options. So that's why I made it negative. Undoubtedly means that without a doubt it is versatile. So I think I like my option. Of course, it looks very complex, and we will see in a second if I'm right. Then in 21, here I chose the adjective substantial, because we have the article a, but then here we already have the noun, yeah, an amount of protein. So typically between an article and the noun, we find an adjective. Yeah, so that's why I chose the adjective substantial from the noun substance. In 22, here because we start a sentence and there is a comma. Yeah, and it says here there are important nutrients for growing kids, and then it continues and gives us more nutrients. Yeah, so that's why I think additionally makes a lot of sense. So often we start sentences with an adverb like this. Yeah, there are other adverbs that we often use, like luckily, unfortunately, obviously. Yeah, so these are often used at the beginning of a sentence, comma, and then we continue. So here I like my choice of adverb additionally from add, and let's see if that makes sense. Then in 23, I chose maintenance, the noun of maintain, simply because we have an article here. So again, that tells us, hey, there needs to be a noun afterwards. And because here we have a preposition, so I think that we wouldn't use an adjective here. So I think here we need the noun, the maintenance of a healthy body. And then last but not least, here again, we have an article. And then there's no noun here, which means I think the noun explanation is probably the right option. So I think this task here is fairly straightforward. Yeah, we have a lot of articles that tell us that we need to use nouns. So I am confident here about my answers. But let's check. Let me have a look at the answers. So the first one here is choice. So I got this one right. Popularity. Then yeah, the plural with specialists. Undoubtedly, I was right about that one. I think that was the most difficult one. Then we have substantial. Additionally, yeah, so my thought was right here as well. Maintenance and explanation. Teacher Phil is still on a streak. Yeah, I've got every answer correct so far, and I hope you have done so as well. Again, you can always ask me questions in the comments. Yeah, if there's anything, maybe you think of a different form, and you are not sure if that might be correct as well, let me know and I will have a look at it for you, okay? So this is how part 3 works. So again, parts 1, 2, and 3 pretty much work in the same way. Yeah, the answers that we have to use are always different. Yeah, sometimes it's an option that you have to choose, a word that you just have to find yourself, as in part 2, or the correct form of a word, like in part 3. But the steps are the same. Read the text, look at the gaps, choose the correct answer, and then you can always, of course, read your text again. But if you are under a little bit of time pressure, you can just move on to the next task as well. That's exactly what we're going to do. So let me delete everything. Let's move on to part 4, and let's have a look at that one. So in part 4, you get these pairs of sentences. One sentence is just a complete sentence, but in the second sentence there is something missing. In each gap, we need to use between 2 and 5 words, and there is this word given, which we have to include in the gap, and it's part of those 2 to 5 words. At the end of the whole process, the 2 sentences need to have the same meaning. And that means for us that we have to transform some of the information from the first sentence so that it fits the second sentence with the same meaning. So my go-to strategy here, and let me zoom in a little bit more, is typically to eliminate all the information that is the same in both sentences. So in our first example here, you can see that the last part is exactly the same. Yeah, it says here, when I arrived at the hotel, but I forgot. When I arrived at the hotel, but I forgot. So this is exactly the same, which means we don't have to worry about this part. If you cross it out, it disappears from your consciousness. Yeah, you are not even aware of it anymore. And by reducing the amount of information, we can focus on the parts that are truly important. So now let's have a look what we need to transform. So it says here, I meant to call you. And then it says here, you a call. And we have to use going. Yeah, so for me, if I say, I meant to do something, there's a structure with going when I say I was going to do something. Yeah. So I think if we start with that, if I say I was going to, so that is the same as saying I meant to, but then we can see here that it says I meant to call you, but here it's like, you a call. And so typically we say that we give someone a call. So here I would probably say, I was going to give you a call. So here, just to double check, yeah, in the gap, we have 4 words, so that's between 2 and 5. We used the key word and we didn't change it. That is important. Never change this word. It has to be exactly that way. And now when we look at the 2 sentences, I meant to call you, I was going to give you a call, I would say that they have the same meaning. Yeah. But again, in a little while, we will find out if I'm correct. So let's have a look at one more example here. So here it says, what do you think of the amount footballers get paid? Tim asked me. And then it says here, Tim, about the amount footballers get paid. Okay, so again, first of all, I can see here, the amount footballers get paid, that's kind of the same thing, right? So we eliminate that. But then you can see the 2 sentences become quite different. So when I look at this, I can see that there is some direct speech here. Yeah. So Tim actually asked us this. So these are his words. And then it says, Tim asked me. And then, but then it starts here with Tim. So I guess there is more of an indirect speech approach that we should use here. But I think we can still start here with Tim asked. I think that still works. If we say Tim asked. And then, because it says here about, maybe we can say thought about. Yeah, think about is a nice combination. Yeah, it's like often a combination of verb and preposition. So think about. So I guess we can say Tim asked, thought about, because he asked me. So maybe something like I thought about. So we could maybe say Tim asked me, or maybe not. Tim asked me, yeah. And then maybe what I thought about. Tim asked me what I thought about. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. Yeah, that would work. I guess I'm not sure if the me is necessary. Tim asked what I thought about. I guess that would also work in a way. Tim asked what I thought about. But because it says he asked me, yeah, I think I want to keep it to make the 2 sentences as similar to each other as possible. So I think I would leave it like this. So again, we have 5 words. Thought is in the gap without any changes. And here, Tim asked me what I thought about the amount footballers get paid. I think the 2 sentences have the same meaning. So I will leave it like this. And yeah, again, let me know if you agree with me. Or if you would remove me. I would leave it in here because it's in the first sentence. Yeah, and of course, I keep the verb form the same. Yeah, asked and asked, that should stay the same. Yeah, same in the first example. I didn't talk about that. So here, I meant is the past simple. That's why I would say I was going to give you a call. So I would also use the past. Yeah, so that's something we need to keep in mind. But anyway, I will look at the other ones as well. And I'll come back in a second. You can have a look at those too. And then when we come back, I will explain to you a little bit what I think about these different sentences. Okay, so I'll talk to you in a moment. All right, so welcome back. And here you can see my ideas for the different gaps. And let's go through them one by one. So in 27, you can see I didn't cross out anything, yeah, because the 2 sentences are very different in their structure. So the only word we could possibly cross out is dark, but that wouldn't help us all that much. So here I think what we need to focus on is, because it says here, we mustn't stay out any longer. Yeah, when we use mustn't, that means there is a prohibition. There's something that we cannot do. Yeah, we mustn't stay out any longer. So we need to go inside. Yeah. So here, I guess leave is a synonym of not staying out any longer. Yeah, we need to leave. We shouldn't stay out any longer. And then we have this little thing here, this weed. And I guess here, this is we had. And I think here, if we say we had better leave, this is a structure that has the same meaning as should. So we had better is the same as we should, but it is a little bit stronger, yeah? Because it says here we mustn't and not we shouldn't. This is also stronger than shouldn't, yeah? So I think this makes sense to use a form that is a little bit stronger than should, and we had better, and then we use the base form of the verb, leave. We had better leave. And then because it says here, it'll be dark soon, so I think before it gets dark is the best option here. So this is a really difficult one, I have to say. And I had to think about this for a minute or two. But I believe this is the right option. So again, I think here this we'd better leave is equivalent to we mustn't stay out. And then we have here the before it gets dark. I think this is where it says it'll be dark soon. I think that transforms that quite nicely. So I think this works. We will see in a second if I'm correct or not, but I hope I am. So then 28. So here this is difficult because here we need to use a phrasal verb. Yeah, turned out to be better. And I'm quite confident here with my answer, or about my answer, because turn out, it says here, in the end it was. Yeah, and that's exactly what turn out means. It means that we talk about what something was like in the end. Yeah, so I would say here that if I underline this, so when I say turned out to be, so it's like in the end it was. It turned out to be. Yeah. And because they said we hadn't expected the party to be very good, but then it turned out to be better. Yeah. Than we expected. So I think here we can see that the whole sentence has been turned upside down a little bit. It says we hadn't expected. And then it says in the second sentence, then we had expected. So these two parts are at opposite ends of the sentences. So yeah, so we need to take that into account. So I think with the phrasal verb, this works quite well. But of course, if you're not familiar with this phrasal verb, this is very difficult. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why phrasal verbs are super important in B2 First, because of things like this. Yeah. Then 29, you can see here, I was able to cross out quite a lot, which always makes life a lot easier. Yeah. So here, this whole first half, and in the second sentence, the second half can be just crossed out. We don't need to worry about it. That's amazing. Yeah, and it says here, because we haven't got enough money. And when you don't have enough of something, then we can say there is a lack of something. So, so basically saying we haven't got enough money, that's the same as saying our lack of money. Yeah, and then because it says here, because that means the lack of money, or that we don't have money, is the reason for why we won't be going on holiday. But because these two parts are reversed in the first and the second sentence, that means the reason comes first now in the second sentence, which means we cannot use because. We need to use an expression that that shows us a result. Yeah, because this part that we crossed out is the result of the second part. Now in the second sentence, reason comes first and result comes second, or the consequence. So that means our expression here in the middle needs to reflect that we are going to see a consequence. That's what it means that does. Yeah, so that works. So I'm quite confident with this about this one as well. And then the last one, you see, I could also cross out a lot. And then it says here, even though they hadn't. And really the only expression within that also shows contrast is in spite of. But after in spite of, we have to use a gerund. And because in the first sentence we have a negative verb form, we have to use the negative gerund. In spite of not having. So here again, I'm quite confident. But let's see how I did. Yeah, let's see how I did. So 25 was going to give. Yeah, I told you I was happy with that. I think 26 we should have right here as well. Asked me what I thought. Yeah, so we got this one too. And 27, we'd better leave before it gets dark. I got that one right as well. Here, so even though this was difficult, yeah, I got this one right. But again, if you don't know this modal verb expression, then you have a problem. Just as here, if you don't know the phrasal verb, that turned out to be better. I got this one as well. Lack of money means that, yeah. And then with this one, I'm pretty sure, yeah, we got this one as well. Yeah, so there are different things that you can do to make your life easier by crossing out things, by underlining the things that you have to transform. But then at the end of the day, if you struggle with phrasal verbs, or if you struggle with certain expressions that you haven't seen before, then you just need to accept that you might not get the correct answer here and move on. Yeah, don't waste your time on these single answers. Remember, there's a bigger picture. You want to pass reading and use of English. You don't just want to get every single answer correct and spend 5 minutes on one of them. Don't waste your time. If you can see, well, I have no idea about this, just write something in the gap and move on. Yeah, don't waste your time. But this is how part 4 works. And remember, you can get 2 marks for each correct answer here. So it can be a good idea to perhaps spend a little bit more time on this one. But again, don't spend minutes on just one of the answers. Yeah, try to get through it quickly and with the strategies that I'm showing you here. And if there are 1 or 2 answers that you don't get, then it is what it is. Think about it that way. There are always 6 other parts that you have to do. Yeah, so then move just on to the next part and try to score all the marks there. But anyway, I think we can move on now to part 5. So let's have a look at that. Here it is, and I'll zoom in just a little bit more. Here we go. So part 5 is the first of 3 longer reading tasks. So parts 5, 6, 7, there you have to really read longer texts and then do different tasks. In part 5, as you can see, you have to answer 6 questions. And for each question, you get 4 possible answers, A, B, C, or D. And if you have watched my video or read my articles on all the different parts, you know that especially in this part here, where we get so many possible answers to choose from, yeah, when we have 4 possible answers, that is definitely just information overload. So my recommendation here is that you simply ignore the possible answers at the beginning of the task. Focus on the questions and try to find the questions to the answers yourself. So pretty much what I would like you to do in this case is what I can do here on screen quite nicely. Yeah, I would just blank out the possible answers like this. Yeah, and I wouldn't worry about them at the beginning. Yeah, see if you can simply answer the questions yourself. That's how I would go about it. So that would be step 1. And then later on, you can look at the possible answers and you can compare what you found with the answers. And typically, there's one answer that agrees with you. And in most cases, that is the correct answer. Yeah. So I'm going to do that now. Yeah. For the first question, I will do this together with you, and then we can do this in a little bit of an accelerated version. But let's have a look at the first question together. So here it says, Adrian, who is the writer, yeah, who talks about La Mercè, which is in the city where I live, yeah, in Barcelona. It's the big summer celebration. It's called La Mercè, and it's a big celebration in the whole city over several days. It is great with concerts and fireworks and the whole shebang. It's really good. And yeah, let's have a look. So Adrian, how did he feel when he saw the city of Barcelona for the first time? Okay, so let's have a look. So typically the questions, they follow the same order as the text. So we can expect to find the answer to this question somewhere at the beginning of the text. So let's get started. So it says here, last September, I attended La Mercè in the city of Barcelona with my family. I had never been to the city before and was looking forward to spending a few days there. After checking in, we wandered into the city for our first look around the city I'd heard so much about. The festival was already in full swing, the footpaths were crowded, making it challenging to move with any speed around the sites. It was nothing I hadn't been warned about, and we were in no rush. So that was okay for him. Okay, so it's not a problem. I could barely take my eyes off the beautiful old buildings as we walked along. All that fascinating history. I imagined all the stories the building would be able to tell. If they had a voice. Traffic buzzed around us, filling the air with sounds of beeping horns, adding to the atmosphere. So reading that first paragraph, it seems to me that Adrian had a very positive impression of Barcelona. He talks about that he liked the buildings and the history, that all the crowds and the noise and all of that didn't really bother him that much. Yeah. So he liked it. Yeah, he said he had traffic buzzed around, adding to the atmosphere. So he actually liked that busy, hectic, noisy atmosphere, and he really enjoyed seeing all these historic buildings. So that is my answer. Yeah, so let's have a look now at our possible options. So it says here, he was amazed at the number of visitors. I don't think that is true. Yeah, I don't think he cared that much about it. He said that this was nothing we hadn't been warned about, and it was okay for him. He was excited by the interesting architecture. I think that is one that could work. Yeah. Annoyed by how noisy the city was. I disagree with this one because, again, he says it was nothing I hadn't been warned about. And pleased about how easy it was to get around. I would also disagree with this because he says it was challenging to move with any speed around the sites. So it was very slow, and he wasn't pleased with it, but he was also not annoyed by it. So I think I can eliminate A, C, and D, and I would say that my choice here is B. Yeah, I'll just tick this. Again, I don't know if it's the correct option, but I am fairly sure that we are right here. Once again, you can tell me if you agree or disagree with me. Yeah, I would love your comments below. And now, what I'm going to do, I will look at the other questions. I will do the same thing. I will make my choices, and you should do the same. And I will come back to you in a second. And again, I will explain why I made my decisions. So I will see you in a second. I hope you'll find the same answers as me, or hopefully the correct answers. So I'll talk to you very soon. Okay, and we are back. So here you can see my choices. And I've also underlined in the text the parts that told me that these answers must be correct. So these are the things that I saw, yeah, that I think gave the answers. So for example, in 32, where it says it required a lot of skills on the part of the participants to make these human towers. He says here, they made it look easy, but what an incredible amount of practice and teamwork the activity must be. Yeah, so he thinks that you need to be very good at this, practice a lot. So I think that works quite well. Yeah. He doesn't say that he was nervous. He says, I gazed in awe. Yeah, awe means like it's more fascination than nervousness. Yeah. He also doesn't say that it took too long. Yeah, he doesn't really talk about that. And it was not as impressive as he had expected it to be. And that is also not true. He even says here, we stood and watched for ages transfixed. Yeah, so he was captivated by the activity, so it didn't take too long. So I think here C is good. In 33, I chose option B. Yeah, he liked about the Parade of the Giants, seeing other people's enjoyment. Yeah, so here he describes the children, how they were fascinated by it as a magical thing. So I think that was the strongest indicator here for me to choose this. he didn't really try to capture the figures on video because he says, I soon abandoned any attempt at filming. So I think that's not true. He talks about that they were wearing historical costumes, but not that he learned that much about it. And he describes that there's music, but not that he is particularly liked listening to the music. So I think B is correct here. In 34, I chose A. So these fire runs, yeah, they are very common in the region of Catalonia in Spain. And because I live here myself, I've seen many of them, and they are really fascinating. But they can be a little bit dangerous if you get too close. So just from my own experience, I guess I would have chosen this anyway. But yeah, when I read the text where it says here, I decided to stand well back away from it. Yeah, so I thought, okay, he decided to keep it, to keep a distance. So I think that's why this is correct. Then in 35, so this word I simply know, yeah, when I read the sentence. So this is easy for me as a teacher, of course. I know that when you sample local specialties like food or wine or something like this, when you sample these things, it means you try them. And in 36, yeah, he talks about that he had always wanted to see La Merced. Yeah, when you long to do something, it means you have a desire. Yeah, so I think here that he satisfied an ambition, or to have fulfilled an ambition. I think that makes sense here. He doesn't really say that he was hopeful to return. He says that if I never came back again, yeah, I'd go home having made the most of the celebrations. Yeah, so he knew that this time he experienced everything he wanted. Yeah, and I think C is the best option here. So I think my explanations make sense to you. Yeah, the underlined parts that give reason to my choices. And let's have a look if I am correct here. So 31 is B. I got this one right. 32 is C. Very nice. 33 is B. Teacher Phil is still continuing on his unbeaten streak. 34 is A. 35 is D, and 36 is C. Good, I got these ones right as well. Yeah, with my reasons being correct. Yeah, so as I showed you at the beginning, don't worry too much about the answers. They just overload you with information, and there's just too much information there. So instead, try to make it more simple for you and for yourself, and eliminate the answers. Yeah, just cover them or just ignore them. And just focus on the questions and try to answer them yourself. Underline these things in the text that you think answer the question. And then when you look back at the possible answers, you can normally immediately eliminate a few answers. And then sometimes there's just one left anyway. Or you might have to choose between two of them. But you can always just go back to the text and have another look. So this is how part 5 works. And with that, let's move on to part 6. Part 6, that is one of the most hated parts in the whole exam. I can tell you that. Where you need to read another longer text with 6 gaps. And for each gap, you have to choose from one of 7 sentences that need to go in these different gaps. Which means, unfortunately, that there is one extra sentence which you don't need to use. And that is the big problem here. Yeah, that you have one extra option, which can, of course, be a little bit extra confusing. So what I normally do, yeah, when I look at this kind of task, I try, and let me zoom in just a little bit more. I try to read the text first and to make a little note on the side of the text in the margins. So I know what each paragraph talks about. Just by knowing the topic of the paragraph, you can sometimes already choose the sentence that is missing, because there might be only one sentence available to us that fits that topic. So very often you can save yourself quite a lot of time just by doing that first step. And so just as an example, yeah, let's look at the first paragraph together. So the text is called Taking Part in the Young Business Person Scheme. Okay. So it says here 14-year-old Carly Smithson reports on taking part in the Young Business Person Scheme at school. She says here, the aim of the Young Business Person Scheme was to give young people like my classmates and I a taste of what it's like running a business, providing an insight into the world of work and raising awareness of the skills needed in the real world that can't be learned in academic lessons, just as handling money and keeping records. So I think what she does here at the very beginning is to give a very short description of what this scheme actually is. Yeah, so I will write down here on the side, what is the scheme? Yeah, let me make this a little bit smaller as well. It's probably better. Yeah, and just with a little note like this on the side, I will just squish this together a little bit. Just like this, I've already helped myself understanding a little bit better what's in this paragraph. Yeah. So I will do the same now for the other paragraphs. And again, I will skip forward because you don't have to watch me read now for a couple of minutes. You should do this quite quickly. Yeah. So 2 or 3 minutes, you should just do this. So you have enough time to do the actual task. Yeah. So I will take these 2 or 3 minutes for myself, and I will see you in a second with some annotations. Okay. So see you soon. Okay, welcome back. So now you can see here, I put very short notes on the side of each paragraph that give me kind of a little bit of an idea of the topic of each part. You might have written something that's a little bit different, and that is okay as long as it's clear to you what your note means. Yeah. And so now from here, what we're trying to do is to look at the sentences, which you can see here on the right, and we are trying to look for certain connections that we can make to the text. So, for example, when we look at the first sentence, it says here, he was pleased. We tried to be more ambitious than other groups. So with he, I guess we are looking here at Matt. Yeah, he's the only man they talk about. And he was pleased. We tried to be more ambitious than other groups. So I guess when I look at this, when we look at where Matt says what he thinks, that's probably here the paragraph with Matt's opinion. So what I would do here is I would just write the number of the gap next to the sentence. Yeah, so that I already know where I could possibly put it without making a decision. And then perhaps the sentence could fit somewhere else. Yeah, it could also fit, for example, in the results section. Yeah, so it says here Matt was positive about that. So I guess maybe gap 42 is an option as well. Yeah, so but I don't think that I would use this sentence in any other gap. Yeah. So again, I would go through this then and just take like a minute or two to just on basis of the topics that you found for your paragraphs, if you can already see a connection to some of the sentences. So again, I will do this very quickly. It will just take me a minute. And when I come back, you can see what I think about these different sentences. Okay, once again, welcome back. So here you can see what I think about these different sentences. And one thing that you can already see is that there are 4 sentences that I would put in just one of the gaps. Yeah. So what I do then is to check if there are other sentences that have the same option. Yeah, for example, the first one that I only gave one option is here 42 for sentence C. But I also think that sentence A might be possible here. Okay, so I'm going to hold back. I'm not gonna make that decision yet. Sentence D, I think it's 37, but then F could also be 37 in my opinion. So again, I'm not gonna make that choice. With 39 here, we have the same issue, but then G is the only sentence where I think this would go in 41, where Carly talks about her responsibility. I think that would fit perfectly here in what her role was in the group. No other sentence makes sense here to me, so I will make that decision right now. Yeah, and I will put option G, and we'll make this a little bit bigger here as well. Option G in gap 41. So I'm already very confident with this. And with that, I can already eliminate this one. It's already gone. Yeah, I don't have to worry about it anymore. So now, of course, we have to think about, okay, what about the other sentences? Yeah. So in the first gap, where it says workshop and example, I have two options here that I like. Yeah, I have D, where it says successful organizations often offer solution, and F, other students shared their experiences and mentioned other minor but frustrating issues. So the one problem that I have with this here is that they mentioned other frustrating issues. So perhaps this is not the right moment yet, because in the text, it doesn't talk about problems. Yeah, I'm not sure. So because it talks before the gap, it talks here about businesses. He encouraged us to think about businesses we might be able to create. If we say then, successful organizations often offer a solution to a problem. And then it says here, take shoelaces. So that would be an example of a problem. So I think I like D a little bit more here than F. So I think I will go with that. So at some point you just have to make a decision. I like D more. I think it fits better into this paragraph. And I will just stick with my answer. Yeah, I'm just confident. We have to be confident here. So that means for F, the only option that I have is 38. Yeah, but just to double check, because I think B could also go in 38. Let's see if they both make a lot of sense. So F, other students shared their experiences and mentioned other minor but frustrating issues. Yeah, so it says here that Carly, she talked about her problem with these food packets, that you want to open them and then they just spill and explode on you. So I think it would make sense that to then say other students shared their experiences as well. So I think that makes sense. In sentence B, it says here, we should have chosen something more straightforward, and that's what we decided to do next. The paragraph it talks about different ideas that they have, but in the gap, I don't think they don't make a decision here. Yeah, I don't think that fits. So I want to go with F in gap 38. I think that's the best one. And again, I will eliminate that. And then what we can do always as well, of course, is to eliminate that possibility from the other sentence. Which now, for example, leaves us with only one option for sentence B. And because no other sentence has option 40, I am confident that I can use this. So I will just add B to gap 40 without thinking too much about it, yeah? Because if there's no other sentence that I think will fit the gap, then B is probably the correct option. Okay, so you can see we are already reducing the information here. And so now for 39, let me have a look again. Yeah, for gap 39, we have again two options, A or E. So it's at the beginning of the paragraph is where the gap is. So my group worked on what I had mentioned, and our suggestion was to create snack packets which could be refastened. Okay. But think about how much more expensive it would be than producing current kinds of packets. So it looks like Matt has some kind of objection to their idea. Yeah, I think because of that, I like E a little bit more. Yeah, Matt wasn't as enthusiastic because he's kind of objecting to their idea. He says like, Bart, think about this. So I like that more. Because he doesn't express that he was pleased. He's more against their idea. So I think E is better. So I will go with E. Yeah. Okay, E, and that means again, I can already remove this option from A. So here we are. So now for the last gap, We only have 2 options remaining, A and C. So let's have a look at that as well. It was when we came to selling our products that we came up against our first real problem. Not many of our classmates wanted a washing up glove. We sold more to teachers than other students. Matt was positive. Excuse me. Matt was positive about that, though. So though is also a contrast. So I think in the gap, there should be something that is not that positive. So when we say he was pleased, and then he was positive though, that doesn't make sense in my opinion. So it says, although we covered our cost, we made very little profit. So that's something negative. And if it says then Matt was positive though, I guess that makes more sense. There's a contrast. So I like C a little bit more. So I take C, which means that A is the sentence that we do not need to use, at least in my opinion. So once again, yeah, let me know in the comments if you agree with me or not. And let's have a look at this. Let's see if Teacher Phil knows what he's doing. So, in gap 37, D is the correct option. That's a good start. 38, it says F, very nice. 39 is E. 40 is B. 41 is G, and 42 is C. Very nice. Teacher Phil is still without a mistake. And I hope you see that all these strategies that I use, that they just make your life easier. Yeah, so step by step, you can get closer and closer to the correct answer by reducing information, by making information more available to you, like here with these little notes. So you don't have to look at the whole paragraph again. You just look at the note and you know what it's talking about, yeah? So remember here, read the text and make your notes on the in the margins, like summarize each paragraph in just a couple of words. Then look at the sentences and kind of make a pre-selection of the gaps that are possible for each sentence, and then you get into it. Yeah, then you have a look again and you decide. Sometimes you are lucky, yeah, as I was with, I think it was sentence G, where I thought that it can only go in one gap. And so yeah, that's how you work your way through part 6. Of course, with my explanations, this takes a little bit longer than it would in the real exam, where you can just focus on it and do it. But I hope you find this helpful. And we have only one more task to do. So let's have a look at part 7. And here we are, last part. And in this part, you can see that you have to answer 10 questions. With those 10 questions, you get either one long text that is broken up into different parts, or you get several shorter texts. In this example, we have 4 shorter texts, but this can go up to 6 shorter texts. Yeah, so on your answer sheet, you might see A, B, C, D, E, F. And even though we only have A, B, C, D to choose from, yeah, don't get confused by this. Just ignore E and F if that's on the answer sheet. Yeah, so sometimes you have 4 options, sometimes you have 5, sometimes 6. So just be prepared for that. Okay, so here in this task, you get these different parts. Yeah, here it talks about TV documentaries. And it says at the top, you're going to read 4 reviews by teenagers of documentaries they have watched. And then you need to find the answers to these questions in those different parts. Yeah. So the first step, and you can see here, the questions come first in part 7. So we should focus on the questions to begin with. So what I recommend is that we look at the questions and underline the key points so we know what we are looking for. Yeah, for example, if we look at the first question, it says, which reviewer managed to gain some of the knowledge they had hoped or expected to? Okay, so here, so we can say gain knowledge they had hoped or expected to gain. Yeah, so they learned something and they wanted to learn this thing from the documentary. Yeah. In the next question, so one of them was pleased with the outcome. Yep. Pleased with the outcome of someone's efforts on the program. Okay. So I would underline that. Yeah. So you can go through all the questions and underline the most important words. As always, I will do this real quick. Yeah, I will do this in a minute. and then you can see what I've underlined. So I'll see you in one moment. And here we are. These are my underlined parts. In some questions, you might have to underline quite a lot. In others, you can underline just a couple of words. But with this, you can focus on the things that are important. So now, the next step is to, of course, answer the questions. And I always preach to my students to use a specific technique. I would always go text by text, meaning that you start with text A, read it once or twice, and you try to find all the questions that you can answer in this part of the text. Then you move on to text B, do the same thing, then C, and then D. This has several advantages. First of all, you don't need to read that much. If, for example, you just start with the first question, and let's imagine the correct answer was D. That means you would have to read the whole text until you get the correct answer. Then if you moved on to the next question, and let's say the answer is C, then again you would read A and B without getting the correct answer. Yeah, so you would waste a lot of time reading parts of the text that do not have the correct answer. So I think it makes much more sense to go text by text, because we can filter out the answers that we can find in text A and then just move on to text B. So you only focus on one text or one part of the text at a time. The second advantage is that once you are done with part A, you can already ignore a couple of the questions because you already know that the correct answer is A. So then when you look at B, there are already fewer questions to worry about. So it becomes easier and easier for you to choose or to find the correct answers as time goes on. So that's why start with part A, try to find all the possible or all the answers that you can find to these questions in A, and then just ignore these questions, move on to B, do the same thing, then go to C and D. So let's have a look at A together, and let's see which questions we can answer here. So Dan, he reviews this documentary called Polar Bear. It says, I saw Polar Bear with my whole family. I was impressed by how it managed to get across some quite complicated information in a way that even my sister, who's a few years younger than me, could understand. I didn't feel talked down to either, like I sometimes do. Some documentaries provide only the basic facts about some issue, and you're often left with lots of unanswered questions. Polar Bear approached the subject of global warming in a fascinating way. The polar bear was tracked for a year, and we saw its habitat through its own eyes, observing how it tried to adapt and seeing firsthand the impact on its life that melting ice is having. I felt more determined than ever to get involved in raising awareness, and I signed up to a local environmental group for young people straight away. So I think there was this one point that I saw. I think here, question 3. They were inspired to take action. So I think when he says here, I felt more determined to get involved and I signed up, I think that is very straightforward for me. I remember that question and I'm happy to just put A right there. So then he talks about some, and so that means for us again, yeah, we can pretty much just cross out this question now. We do not have to worry about it anymore. So I think with the other information, so this is, I was impressed by how it managed to get across some quite complicated information. I think it doesn't really talk about this. Not really. None of the questions talked about how the program taught things. He talks about his sister, that she understood it. He also says he didn't feel talked down to. That's also in none of the questions, I think. Then he says that it was, I mean, he talks here about maybe how they made the documentary, but it's not really special effects. So I think this might be the only one. So I can't really find any other answers, but I might be wrong about this. Maybe later, if we are still stuck with one of the questions, perhaps we will find that here in A. But for now, I'm happy with just this one question. And so now I will do the same thing with B, C, and D. Again, you will not have to watch me do all of this. And let's see how I do and if I can find all the answers there. So I'll see you again in a second. This will probably take me around 10 minutes or 8 minutes or so, and then I will see you back very soon. Okay, so welcome back for the last time. Here we are, and yeah, this is what I think the correct answers are. So I stuck with my opinion that there's only one question that we can answer in part A, but I actually found 4 answers in part C. That's a little bit unusual, and I'm not sure if all of this is correct, but we will see. You can also see I've underlined the different parts that I believe give me the answer to all these questions. And of course, I have to check if I'm correct there. So you can, of course, again, pause the video. You can have a look at what I've underlined, even though it's quite small as well. I hope you can see it. And as always, please let me know if you disagree with me, if you have your doubts, so I can clarify what I think with you. So let me check my answers one last time, and let's see if Teacher Phil went through this unblemished. So 43 is D, 44 B, 45 is A, 46 C, 47 is B, 48 is C, 49 as well. Okay, I'm happy about that. 50 is D, 51 is B, and 52 is C. Teacher Phil gets through reading and use of English in B2 first with a full score. I'm very happy. Of course, I should, as someone who prepares other people for their Cambridge exams. But I think it was also not the point of this video. Instead, I hope that you were able to see all these strategies and techniques that I use, not only from my articles and maybe my videos now, where I might give you one example, but here you could see how I do this in action. And obviously, this video is longer than the actual reading and use of English exam because of all the commentary I give. But in your exam, I hope you can now just race through the questions with the right techniques, get the marks that you deserve, and of course pass the exam. So with that being said, thank you for following me here, and let's go back to my living room to finish the video. Thank you very much, and I'll see you there in a second.
Thank you for watching the video until the end. Now you know how you can get through B2 first reading and use of English quickly and scoring the largest number of marks possible. So I hope this video gives you confidence for your own practice. But if you want, I can also be your teacher. I offer online classes as well as writing feedback, with or without Leo. And as always, all the links are in the description box below. And I see you in the next video.